to get the inheritance, my own brother dragged me into a 3S level horror instance. Just when he thought I'd be torn to shreds, the specters started showering me with gifts. The headless man gave me flowers from his own garden. The specter granny knitted me a warm sweater. The blood infant hung its beloved bone whistle around my neck. And these were all 2S level items. My brother's eyes went red with jealousy. What he didn't know was that before the family found me, I'd spent 10 years working in these instances. I had just been taken in by the family when my so-called brother, Brandon, pulled me into a horror game. My supposed parents gave me the whole "we're doing this for your own good" act. You just got home. If you walk straight into the corporation, the old guard on the board will definitely have something to say. You need to prove yourself. Brandon chimed in with his own fake concern. Mom and Dad were going to just give the company to me, but you're my sister. To be fair, whoever can clear the instance the fastest gets the inheritance. I rolled my eyes, annoyed. Cut the crap. Which instance is it? No one's in a good mood when they're dragged out of bed at the crack of dawn. It's a tough life for a night owl who went to sleep at 4 a.m. Seeing that I agreed, Brandon's face broke into a smile of absolute certainty. Plainview. Plainview was the only 3S level instance to ever appear. Unlike other instances, if you died in Plainview, you had two choices: become one of its specters, or return to the real world and die instantly. But becoming a specter wasn't a guarantee of survival, either. You had to be accepted by the instance's guardian. Since the instance first appeared, only 5 people had ever cleared it. Aside from the mysterious first player who had never shown their face, the other 4 were now legends in the world of horror instances. It was pretty clear Brandon wanted me trapped in here forever. Seeing me silent, he must have thought I was having second thoughts, because he immediately tore the teleport scroll in his hand. Too late to back out now. Once the scroll is activated, the only way out is to clear the instance or die. Brandon had no idea that before the family took me in, I'd been working in these instances for 10 years. On the outside, I looked angry, but inside, I was nervous. I wondered if my old friends would be mad at me. 5 years ago, I promised I'd come back to visit when I got the chance, but I got bogged down with work and school. I guess Brandon dragging me in here was a blessing in disguise. When I opened my eyes again, Plainview spread out before me. Looking at the familiar streets, a smile crept across my face. Old friends Sarah's back. Once we were inside, I finally understood why Brandon was so confident. He'd spent a fortune on a ton of S-level items or higher before we came in, just to stay alive. On top of that, my so-called parents had paid a huge sum to hire 2 legendary players who had already cleared the instance to lead the team. Leo, the second player to ever clear Plainview, had a cold, distant expression. And Lily, the player who held the record for the fastest clear time, looked like a bubbly, cute girl. Me, I didn't have the money for fancy items. My parents had used my age as an excuse to seize all the assets that should have been mine. I was flat broke, so I just carried a beat-up burlap sack into the instance. Seeing the sack on my shoulder, Brandon started being a jerk again. You're really bringing that garbage in here? You're my sister after all. You want me to spot you a few items? I was too busy checking out the current state of Plainview to bother with him. I'm good. I patted the dust off my sack. The things in this sack weren't worth much money, but to me, they were more valuable than any of those so-called S items. Nearly every player who came to the instance chose to stay at the town's only inn. A stone tablet by the main entrance was carved with the rules of Plainview. Each room must be occupied by at least 2 people. Ignoring this rule will result in termination by a specter. Items can only be obtained if a specter offers them as a gift. Taking them by force will result in retaliation from all of Plainview's residents. To clear the instance, you must receive gifts from 3 or more bosses. Otherwise, you fail. Players may stay in the town for a maximum of 7 days. Failure to clear the instance within the time limit will result in termination. As night fell, a thick fog enveloped Plainview. The specters began to hunt. Normally, the boss-level specters only appeared at the very end. To show how generous and brotherly he was, Brandon had Lily stay in the same room as me. Starting from the first floor, the specters began knocking on each door. Open up. These were just the common, weaker specters. The violent knocking echoed through the inn, the force so great it felt like the doors would be smashed off their hinges. Lily had cleared this instance before, so she was experienced with these creatures. Don't be scared. As long as you don't open the door, they can't get in. I didn't fully trust her, but if she was being nice, I wasn't going to refuse it. Okay. The waiting was a little boring. I sat cross-legged on the bed, binge-watching a show on my phone while devouring a huge slice of strawberry cake. Lily looked a little surprised, like she'd never seen a player this relaxed before. She looked like she wanted to say something, but remembered her employer was Brandon and kept her mouth shut. Just then, a shrill whistle pierced the entire inn. Lily's relatively calm expression instantly changed. How could it be that one? It's not supposed to show up yet. Everyone knew that in plain view. The only specter that could produce such a whistle was the 2S level blood infant. Even though it was the boss of the first night, it was only supposed to appear in the final few minutes. And this specter was incredibly hard to deal with. Very few players ever managed to get a gift from it. Its childlike nature made it impossible to predict what it wanted. One time a piece of candy might earn you a gift, but the next time it could be something completely different. It all depended on its mood, so most players didn't even bother trying. Of course, some players would try their luck, but they always ended up as food for the blood infant. Lily had plenty of experience. She quickly covered her ears, then pulled a rope from her backpack and tied her hands securely. Then she tossed a rope to me, signaling for me to tie myself up. Hurry. Don't just stand there. Players with weak minds would be controlled by the blood infant's whistle, compelled to open the door and walk out, only to have their throats torn out. Soon, the sounds of players' screams and terror filled the inn. Most players weren't prepared for the blood infant to appear so early. The inn's hallways and rooms were quickly littered with limbs and bloodstains. A loud thud came from Brandon's room next door. Turns out, Brandon couldn't resist the whistle's hypnosis and was frantically trying to open the door, but Leo stopped him. Just then, the blood infant's whistle was right outside our door. The whistling grew faster, louder. It was almost unbearable. Lily had already passed out. In a daze, I walked to the door, hesitating for a moment before opening it. Another sharp whistle, and I pulled the door open. Standing there was a big-headed baby girl with wrinkled, pale blue skin. She puffed out her cheeks, blowing hard on a bone whistle. Her large, round head, reflecting the dim light, looked strangely, morbidly cute. Seeing someone open the door, she giggled happily. Hee hee hee, can I eat you now? Then she opened her mouth wide and lunged at me. Just as she was about to bite me, I reached out, wrapped my arms around her, and gently kissed her big head. Little Grape, I'm back. For a moment, the blood infant froze completely. A few seconds later, the blood infant started moving again. She let out a petulant huff and lunged at me again, trying to look fierce. Who cares that you're back? I'm gonna bite you to death. Her chubby little face was contorted in a ferocious expression as she opened her mouth wide, but just as she was about to bite me, she immediately softened the motion. She gently rested her head on my shoulder, her big blood-red eyes filled with longing. Bad sister. I thought you were never coming back. My heart melted. I stroked the blood infant's head. I missed you most of all, Little Grape. How could I not come back? I knew it. When I was working in the instance, Little Grape was the clingiest. That was because I was the only one who could make her favorite chocolate-flavored human brain cookies. She must have sensed I was back, and came to find me first. After all, according to the instance's usual schedule, it wasn't her turn to appear yet. Little Grape lifted her head. It's not just me. Mr. Wallace, Mrs. Sullivan, they all came. They're waiting for you outside the inn. Oh, and the mayor said you're in some trouble this time. Do you need our help? I glanced at the door to Brandon's room. No, I can handle it myself. I'll come find you all when I get a chance. Your time is almost up. You should go back now. With that, I pulled a rattle drum from my burlap sack and handed it to her. Is this a present for me? I love it. Thank you, sister. This is for you. I have to go now. Little Grape hung her prized 2S item, the bone whistle, around my neck and, shaking her new rattle, went off to the other floors. The players' screams echoed through the inn again, lasting until the break of dawn. After the blood infant left, the inn fell silent once more. The first night was over. When the sun came up, the survivors straggled out of their rooms. After last night's unexpected events, they were all much more cautious. Many teams that had lost members temporarily joined forces to form new groups. When Brandon knocked on my door, I was organizing the things in my sack. These were all things I had collected over the past 5 years, all for the day I could bring them back to my friends in the instance. For someone like me, who grew up without parents, these specters felt more like family than anyone else. I opened the door to find Brandon and Leo standing there, along with several other players. They were all looking to Brandon as their leader. I had already guessed the family had sent more people than just Leo and Lily, so I wasn't surprised to see them. Brandon seemed a little disappointed to see me completely unharmed. "Sister, are you okay?" "What? Are you disappointed?" "No, of course not. I just want you to be safe. I heard you got a gift from the Blood Infant last night. Congratulations." He said congratulations, but his eyes were filled with undisguised jealousy. He looked like he wanted to rip the bone whistle from my neck and put it on his own. After all, it was a rare 2S level item. I ignored him. I loved seeing him hate me but be unable to do anything about it. But what else with bringing all these people to my room? You saw what happened last night. These specters are getting crazier. For our own safety, let us all stick together from now on. To convince me to stay with them, Brandon swapped our regular rooms for a luxury suite with 4 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. I wasn't going to turn down a free upgrade to a bigger room, so of course I agreed. They must have seen me get away from Little Grape unharmed, so they knew I had her gift. Brandon's suggestion that we all stay together probably wasn't coming from a good place, but I was curious to see what tricks he had up his sleeve. After breakfast, Leo and Lily suggested we leave the inn to look for clues. I didn't really have an opinion on their proposal. I worked in this instance for 10 years. I even knew where my headless neighbor, Mr. Wallace, hid his secret stash of cash. Finding clues was a piece of cake for me. With Leo and Lily around, any specters that came looking for trouble were easily dealt with. I walked at the back, watching them work. The creatures attacking us at this stage were all low level, none of my old friends were among them, so I wasn't worried at all. The guardian of this instance was a 3S level specter, known as the town mayor. I'd only seen him at the town residents meeting, which happened every 2 years. He almost never came out otherwise. According to the instance rules, players could use the clues they collected to trade for gifts from the bosses. Get the gifts and survive for 7 days, and you cleared the instance. Leo and Lily, using their past experience, quickly found most of the clues needed to pass. Just as we were looking for the last few clues, a new set of rules appeared in the sky. A temporary 3S level clue-finding quest was added to Plainview. Clue 1, Granny Spectre-S reading glasses. Clue 2, the Demon Barber-S scissors. Clue 3, a flower from the Headless Neighbor-S garden. And the guardians of these clues were all 2S level specters. If players couldn't find the clues by midnight, they would all be dragged into the town residents' masquerade ball. At the masquerade ball, all players and specters would wear identical masks and similar cloaks. If a player couldn't tell the difference between another player and a specter, they would be immediately terminated. Every player's face fell. Wow, they weren't even trying to hide it. Was this supposed to kill them, or kill them? The instance rules have changed, and the difficulty has shot up. What's going on? Brandon's face was pale. What do we do now? Can we just go back to the inn? According to the rules, as long as players hid in their rooms at the inn, specters couldn't actively break in to hunt them. Leo and Lily shook their heads. A 3S level quest is mandatory. Even if we return to the real world, we'd be dragged back to participate. We have to complete it, or we'll be hunted down no matter where we run. When I saw the new rules, I felt both helpless and touched. For other players, these tasks were a nightmare. For me, they were free points. I could find these things with my eyes closed. ID said I could handle Brandon and his crew on my own, but their blatant favoritism warmed my heart. It felt pretty good to have family looking out for me. To clear the quest, we needed to deal with the guardian specters and grab the clues. Brandon suggested using his S-level items. I was just thinking, since when is Brandon so generous? Then I heard Leo voice a different opinion. This is a 3S level instance. Items of that rank will be less effective here. Didn't Mississippi Sarah get a gift from the Blood Infant last night? That's a 2S level item. It'll work much better than an S level one. A flicker of something crossed Brandon's eyes. Sister, if you're willing to use your item, we'll compensate you with others. I'm sure you don't want to fail the instance, right? I was wondering when they'd make their move. So this was it. I really wanted to say that even if they all failed, I wouldn't but it wasn't worth arguing with them. I couldn't be bothered. As soon as Brandon finished speaking, the other surviving players who had gathered there chimed in. Yeah, Mississippi Sarah, the instance has changed. For everyone's safety, you should just hand over the item. Someone muttered under their breath. A 2S level item is wasted on a rookie like you anyway. You might as well give it up. Exactly. A little girl like you will probably just cry when the real monsters show up. These people were so damn patronizing. I scanned everyone in the group. Is that how you all feel? Meeting my gaze, most of the players, except for a few with a shred of conscience, seemed to think it was my duty to hand over the bone whistle. Never mind that the item was mine to begin with, it was a gift from Little Grape. How I used it was my business, and no one had the right to tell me what to do. It's my item. I have the right to use it or not, and I don't need you all telling me what to do. If you're so good at lecturing, why don't you go try reasoning with the specters? Maybe they'll be so offended by your bad breath they'll just hand over the clues. I fanned my hand in front of my nose, as if their stench was getting to me. They seemed shocked that a rookie player would have the nerve to talk back. Feeling like they'd been disrespected, they tried to save face. You little brat, what did you say? If it weren't for the fact that you're from the what? Go on, finish your sentence. Just then, Brandon stepped in to play peacemaker. Everyone, don't make things hard for my sister. If she doesn't want to, then let us drop it. I think we should focus our efforts on finding the clues together. We'll have a better chance that way, don't you all agree? As the heir to the family corporation, with two legendary players like Leo and Lily backing him up, Brandon had no trouble rallying the crowd. In the end, all the surviving players agreed to focus their efforts on getting the clues first. To avoid any more drama, I announced I was forming my own team of one. Before they could react, I plunged into the town's thick fog. Behind me, I could faintly hear Brandon's concerned voice. I wonder if my sister will be in danger looking for clues all by herself. The other players started comforting him, saying he was a great brother who had done his best to look out for me, and that I was just ungrateful. Looked out for me? Remembering the real reason I was lost, I could only laugh. Brandon thought I had no memory of my life before I was 3, but he didn't know I was a prodigy. I started talking at 1, and by 2, I had memorized entire classic texts. Later, I showed an incredible talent for mathematics. Back then, the head of the family, my grandfather, even said that the future of the company might one day rest on my shoulders. As for my short-sighted parents and my mediocre older brother, they weren't capable of leading the family business to greater heights. At the time, Brandon was already 12, old enough to understand what was happening. In his eyes, I was a threat to his position in the family. So when I was 3 years old, during a family outing, Brandon had someone abandon me. They left me in the middle of nowhere. That was when, by a strange twist of fate, I stumbled into the Plainview instance and became a special part of it. My thoughts returned to the present. Following the path from memory, I first went to Granny Spector's house. The familiar figure was there, wearing her reading glasses and knitting in a rocking chair made of human bones. I called out to her from a distance. Mrs. Sullivan. The sound startled the low-level specters wandering nearby, and they started to close in on me. But before they could even touch my clothes, Mrs. Sullivan shooed them away. Her head swiveled 180 degrees, and she greeted me with a wide smile. She looked just like any other sweet old lady. Long time no see, little Sarah. I rushed into her arms. I missed you so much, Mrs. Sullivan. How have you been? Mrs. Sullivan patted my back affectionately, and we chatted like a grandmother and granddaughter catching up. There were a few minor hitches, of course. At one point, her false teeth fell out. A little later, her hands detached themselves and scurried off to the kitchen to cook. But I was used to it. We talked for nearly 20 minutes before I sensed other players approaching and reluctantly said my goodbyes. Before I left, I pulled some special heat patches for her from my sack. The patches were incredibly effective for both humans and specters. I had done a ton of research and waited in a long line to buy them. Mrs. Sullivan suffered from severe arthritis in her legs. On gloomy days, the pain was bone deep, and the only relief she found was by chopping her legs off. It was hard for her to get around without her legs, so this gift was perfect. She was so happy with the gift that her eyes literally popped out of her head with laughter. You should go now, little Sarah. Don't worry, I'll take care of these people for you. Especially that nasty brother of yours. Thanks, Mrs. Sullivan, but don't kill him. Letting him die that easily would be letting him off too lightly. And please be careful. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. With Mrs. Sullivan's reading glasses in hand, and wearing the sweater she had knitted for me, I cheerfully headed next door to the headless neighbor, Mr. Wallace's house. When I got there, Mr. Wallace was being punished by his wife, kneeling on a row of knives. Literally. It was a bloody mess. Apparently, Mr. Wallace had gone fishing and gotten so absorbed that his head had been washed away by the river. He came back empty-handed, and without his head. By the time he found it, the fish had gnawed it to shreds, leaving only half a skull. Everyone called him the headless specter, but he actually had a head. It just had a habit of falling off, so he usually left it at home when he went out or was on a mission. I have no idea why he decided to take it fishing this time. Mr. Wallace, kneeling on the knives again? Mrs. Wallace was thrilled to see me, and went to cut up some fruit. I secretly gave Mr. Wallace some advice. I told him how to get back in his wife's good graces, and he was so moved that he insisted on giving me a massive bouquet of flowers, so big I could barely hold it. Meanwhile, Brandon and his team were still trapped in Mrs. Sullivan's yarn maze. Even with Leo and Lily protecting them, the 2S level specter was giving them a hard time. The yarn maze seemed to be alive, appearing and disappearing at will, waiting for a chance to devour a player. Coincidentally, every time Brandon was about to be swallowed, the maze would narrowly avoid him, and a nearby player would become the victim instead. After a while, the other players started to notice the pattern, and the way they looked at Brandon began to change. If I were there, I would have given Mrs. Sullivan a big thumbs up. Age and experience really do count for something. After leaving gifts for Mr. and Mrs. Wallace, my next stop was the shop of the demon barber, my friend Lenny. I also had to visit Auntie Shaw, the tentacle monster Jane, the slit-mouthed woman Chainsaw Hank. I made a dozen stops in a row, collecting quite a few gifts from my old friends. My last visit was to Little Grape, the blood infant. She usually slept during the day and woke up at dusk. When I arrived, she was just getting up. Little Grape and her friends lived in an orphanage. Most of the infants here had been abandoned for various reasons, and their resentment was so strong that they were all high-level specters, at least A grade. Little Grape was the most powerful among them. She saw herself as the big sister who had to take care of her younger siblings, so she was usually the one who went on missions. The moment the little baby spirits saw me, they all turned into perfect angels. I got to pinch their little cheeks, kiss their little hands, rub their little bellies, and pat their little bottoms. I hugged one, kissed another. I was having the time of my life. Well-behaved kids are just so adorable. Finally, after giving them all the presents I had brought, I prepared to head back to the inn. My sack was empty now, except for one last gift, which I had saved for the mayor. Little Grape didn't want me to leave and tried to follow, but I managed to talk her into staying. It was already evening when I got back to the inn. My legs felt like noodles after walking all day, so I decided to take a nap. Meanwhile, Brandon's team had just acquired the flower from the headless neighbor, and were heading towards the demon barber's shop. The flower I got was a huge bouquet. The one they had was a single, tiny, malnourished-looking bloom. It was obviously one of the flowers Mr. Wallace was planning to throw away. If they couldn't get all the clues by midnight, they would be dragged into the masquerade ball. The masquerade ball was a direct quest from the town mayor, and its difficulty would be even higher than that of Plainview itself. If that happened, they might all end up dead in this instance. The demon barber's shop was just ahead, surrounded by a crowd of specters. The clue was inside. Brandon looked terrible. His clothes were in tatters, and he was covered in blood and wounds. Even in this state, he was still keeping up appearances. I haven't seen Sarah anywhere. Where could she have gone? I'm really worried about her. In his heart, he had already written Sarah off as dead. The other players knew it too. A lone player like Sarah was probably already torn to shreds by specters. The players who usually agreed with him were now silently resting and tending to their wounds, ignoring him completely. Brandon noticed this. Wanting to save face, he tried to rally the players to prepare for the next challenge, but no one moved. After the previous encounters, Most players had seen his selfish nature and were no longer willing to follow his lead. Seeing that his words had no effect, Brandon's expression turned grim. But he was a master of appearances, and didn't he want to completely alienate the other players yet? So he had the people his family sent go first. The players braced themselves, preparing their items to face the demon barber. Fortunately, Leo and Lily were still reliable, and they finally managed to open the door to the shop. But when the door swung open, it revealed an empty room. A large sign was propped up in the middle of the shop. This shop has moved to another street. The new address is 444 Skull Road. At the bottom was a comical ghost face, as if mocking them. The moment they saw the sign, every player's face turned green. There was only 1 minute left until midnight. This meant that no one here was going to clear the quest. Brandon was so angry he coughed up blood. His face was as pale as a ghost's. A complaint. I want to file a complaint against this instance, against this demon barber. I want to. Before he could finish, all the players vanished from the spot. When they reappeared, they were at the town residents' masquerade ball. It was a dimly lit auditorium. The room was illuminated by white candles and decorated with various human bones and skulls. There were also all sorts of food and drinks brought by the town residents. Human blood milfy durian cake, mint-flavored human eyeball boba slushies, chewy and spicy stir-fried tongue rice cakes, stringy hair cheese pizza. Players and specters were each given a red or white numbered tag and entered wearing identical masks. The numbers on the tags corresponded, and those with the same number were paired up. Players and specters were mixed, meaning your opponent could be a human or a specter. You could only pass if you correctly identified your opponent, otherwise, you were terminated. I had been asleep in my dream, but when I opened my eyes, I was in the town auditorium, holding an invitation. The masquerade ball was a special welcome ceremony arranged just for me. I knew this place well. The town residents' meetings were always held here. This event was personally hosted by the town mayor. Under the intimidating presence of a 3S level specter, no one was foolish enough to cause trouble. This was the first time the town mayor had appeared before humans previously. Only the specters had seen him. The players had expected the mayor to be an old man, but he turned out to be a handsome man. 6'3" with broad shoulders and a narrow waist. At first glance, he was more dazzling than any celebrity from the human world. To be honest, the first time I saw the mayor, I was also a bit starstruck. He was the most handsome person, human or specter, I had ever seen. Many players thought it would be easy to tell the difference between specters and other players. But they realized they were wrong as soon as they entered the auditorium. The masks were identical, the cloaks were similar, and everyone had a voice changer. At a glance, even height and build seemed the same. The numbers were announced. Coincidentally, my opponent was Brandon. I had a photographic memory and superhuman powers of observation. No human or specter could hide their true identity from me. A bell chimed, and the mayor announced the start of the game. A long table was set up in the center of the auditorium, with each pair sitting opposite each other. At some point, all the lights went out, leaving only the area around the table illuminated. The rules. Players and specters have 5 minutes to observe and question each other. You can ask 3 questions. The person with the white number tag asks first. You pass if you correctly write down your opponent's identity. Passing earns you 1 2S level item. If both sides pass, they can, with mutual consent, duel to win the other's item. The duel format is their choice. Specters had their own special ways of communicating, so they could easily recognize each other. Overall, this game was heavily stacked against the players. First pair begin. The player and specter had to write their opponent's identity on a board in front of them. It was a bad start. The first pair were both players, but both wrote down the wrong identity. The 2 players were quickly dragged away by specters lurking in the shadows. Their screams echoed from the darkness. The sound of crunching bones filled the air, and a terrifying atmosphere spread through the auditorium. Then came the second pair, the third, the fourth. As time ticked by, only 5 players managed to pass, while 20 specters had cleared the round. Some players couldn't take the pressure and tried to escape with teleport scrolls or use items to kill specters, but they were all swiftly suppressed. By the end, most players were on the verge of a mental breakdown, especially those who enjoyed torturing specters and had done terrible things. Some had already lost their minds. They were devoured before they could even write down an identity. Dawn was approaching. The last pair was me and Brandon. He had the white number tag. Although Brandon was on the brink of collapse, I had to admit that his elite education was paying off. During the 5-minute observation period, he gradually calmed down. I thought he wouldn't ask any questions, but his first one was surprisingly sharp. Brandon, what color is the sky during the day? Thinking of the ever-changing sky in the real world, and the perpetually dim sky in the instance, I pondered for a few seconds before answering. It can be any color. Brandon, is strawberry cake sweet? I've never had it, so I don't know. It was common knowledge that specters couldn't taste sweetness. No matter how I answered, it would be wrong. It was better to plead ignorance. Brandon, do you think it's better to be human or a specter? I didn't answer that question. In that moment, I suddenly realized that Brandon wasn't as arrogant and stupid as he appeared. All 3 questions seemed simple, but each one was a trap. Actually, my answer to the last question didn't matter. He had already seen through me from my answer to the first question. In the world of specters, there was no concept of day or night. That was a definition brought in by the players who entered the instance. So no matter how I answered, I would have been wrong. Sure enough, when the time was up, Brandon wrote down my identity on his board. Player Sarah. I knew you weren't dead. I shot back, you're still alive and kicking, so of course I couldn't leave before you. I had also written down his identity. Player Brandon. The mayor announced the results. Player Brandon passed. Player Sarah passed. We both answered correctly, so according to the rules, we would both receive a passing item. But Brandon was clearly not satisfied. A bloodthirsty smile spread across his face, but it didn't reach his eyes. I demand a duel. Sister, do you agree? In that moment, I had to admit we were truly brother and sister, both with a streak of madness in our blood. Because my own blood was boiling. We were born to be enemies. Brandon proposed a duel using items. He had even taken the items that Leo and Lily had just won. That's right, they were both among the players who had passed. To everyone else, it looked like Brandon was bullying the weak, but only I knew that I had more items than I could count. Brandon thought I was too poor to afford items, but in reality, I was the most well-equipped person in the entire arena. He threw every item he had at me. Almost all of them were S level, with several 2S items mixed in. Shadow Frost, Celestial Fire, Dragoness Wrath. A bolt of lightning flashed, but it was blocked by the sweater I was wearing, the one Mrs. Sullivan had knitted for me. A clap of thunder struck, but it was nullified by a barrier from my bone whistle. A water dragon surged forward, but it was stopped by a sea of petals from Mr. Wallace's flowers. A venomous snake lunged, but it was snipped into pieces by a pair of sharp scissors. These were all 2S level items. With their help, I didn't even get a single scratch. The more Brandon fought, the more shocked he became, until he was on the verge of a breakdown. By the time he used his last item, he still hadn't defeated me. Finally, Brandon completely lost control. His eyes red with jealousy. How do you have so many high-tier items? You cheated. You must have cheated. How did you trick these specters? Why would they give you all of their guardian items? I stood inside my protective barrier and smiled sweetly at him. Because they're my family. Brandon lost the duel. He thought I was too poor to afford items, but he never knew that the specters had long considered me family, taking me under their protective wing and giving me only the best. In the end, I collected the 2S item Brandon had just won and walked cheerfully over to the specters who had been cheering me on. Without any items, Brandon couldn't pass the instance. The only thing awaiting him was death. But just as I turned away, a long sword pierced through my chest. Brandon's voice was sinister. Let me teach you one last thing, little sister. All is fair in war. With that, he kicked me towards the crowd of specters. Brandon had a 3S level item. It turned out that Brandon was the very first person to ever clear the Plainview instance. As the first one to pass, the instance had rewarded him with a 3S level longsword. The entire place erupted. Leo and Lily were also stunned. It finally clicked for them. No wonder the family had been so confident about sending Brandon into the instance. He had this kind of trump card up his sleeve. All the specters went insane. Seeing me injured, they lunged at Brandon with bared claws and teeth. They even started attacking the remaining players indiscriminately. But before the specters could even get close to Brandon, They were swatted away by the sword. They were no match for its power. Leo and Lily quickly used their own emergency items to create a protective barrier. Leo was distracted for a second, and Anti-Shaw, the tentacle monster, twisted his legs off. Even if he made it out of here, he would be crippled for life. The players struggled to hold on, while the specters raged. The usually kind and elegant Mrs. Sullivan now had a ferocious expression. The adorable little grape reverted to her true blood infant form, her massive mouth ready to swallow the heavens. Mr. Wallace ripped off his head, his body suddenly growing enormous as he charged at Brandon with a butcher's knife. They charged again and again, getting injured each time, their power levels slowly dropping. If they couldn't find a solution soon, they would all eventually fade away. I felt my life force draining away, my vision growing dark. The mayor slowly walked to my side and sighed softly. You have two choices now. 1. I save your life, but you can never enter an instance again, and everything that happens here will have nothing to do with you. 2. You choose to become a specter, but you must remain in this instance forever, and the outside world will no longer concern you. And even if you become a specter, there's no guarantee. When you awaken, you could be a common specter, or a guardian level 1. If you're just a common specter, you still won't be able to save them. Can you accept that? I thought back to when I first came here as a child, how I had to pester and plead with Mrs. Sullivan and the others to accept me. My resolve hardened. After all, the best years of my life were spent with them. Without them, I would have died 1,000 times over. I want to save them. I believe in them, and I believe in myself. Just as my breathing stopped, a white light enveloped me. When I opened my eyes again, my once dark eyes were now mismatched, one black, one red, and a blood-red beauty mark had appeared between my brows. A notification from the game world sounded. Ding. Instance updating. Plainview instance successfully upgraded. New instance level, 5S. New instance guardian, Blood Maiden of Fate. Level, 5S. Blood Maiden of Fate skill, absolute domain. Skill description. Within the Blood Maiden of Fate's domain, she has absolute control over all existence. I had become the new guardian of this instance. With a wave of my hand, all of Mrs. Sullivan's and the others' injuries healed. I looked at them and said softly, "Leave the rest to me." Brandon saw the change in me and lunged with his longsword, but he couldn't move an inch, frozen in place. I took the longsword from him and flicked the blade with my finger. Do you remember how you got this sword? If you can't, I can help you recall. Then, my hand shot out like a claw, and I ripped both of Brandon's arms off. Blood splattered as he remained frozen in my domain, forced to watch his own life force drain away. This was absolute domination. It turned out that years ago, when Brandon entered the instance for a mission, he ran into me. He recognized me, of course. Back then, he sweet-talked me, saying he knew he was wrong and hoped I could forgive him. He promised that if he could get back to the real world, he would find a way to bring me back to the family. I was young then and couldn't resist his pleading, so I believed him. But he was just using me to get the items needed to clear the instance. After he got the first clear reward, he showed his true colors. As if that wasn't enough, he used the item to severely injure me. If Mrs. Sullivan and the others hadn't begged the mayor to intervene, I wouldn't have survived. I was sent out of the instance to recover and didn't have a chance to return for 5 whole years. The experience was so traumatic that I had automatically blocked out the memory, only remembering it just now. This time, he had entered the instance with the full intention of erasing me for good. A look of terror appeared on Brandon's face as he saw the undisguised killing intent in my eyes. "Sister, please spare me just one more time. I'll never bother you again, I swear. I'll turn over a new leaf. I'll go back and give up the inheritance. I'll give you everything, just let me go." Brandon never got to finish his sentence, because I plunged the longsword into his chest. A few seconds later, his body collapsed, but he wasn't even given the chance to become a specter, because I wouldn't allow it. My will was now the law of the instance. Brandon's body, along with the remaining survivors, was teleported out of the instance. In the game world, everyone was in shock. They discovered that the entrance to Plainview had suddenly closed. When it reopened, the instance had become 5S level. The guardian of the instance had changed from the town mayor to the Blood Maiden of Fate. The entire player community was buzzing, all desperately trying to get into the instance. And what about the original guardian, the mayor? The official answer was that no one knew. After the instance was upgraded, he took the gift I gave him and disappeared. Some said he might be a high-level executive at the main game company. Others said he was killed by the Blood Maiden of Fate. The rumors were wild, and more people flocked to the instance to explore. With the upgrade, the items also leveled up, and the specters became more ferocious, but that didn't stop the players' enthusiasm. As for the family in the real world, Brandon's death sent them into chaos. Other relatives condemned my parents for their failure to produce a worthy heir, and demanded they hand over control. Being mediocre themselves, they couldn't hold on to the family business, and could only watch as their power was stripped away, and they were kicked out of the corporation. They were also investigated for trading power for sex, and ended up in prison. They regretted it then, regretted not stopping their son. Perhaps they had suspected their son was responsible for their daughter's disappearance, but doctors had told them that years of debauchery had ruined their bodies, and they could no longer have children. Brandon was their only heir. So even if they knew of their son's crime, they had to accept it. They even used the family's influence to cover up the past. That's why the world only knew that the first player to clear Plainview was a mysterious figure, but not that it was Brandon. I heard all of this from the players who came to clear the instance. But none of it had anything to do with me anymore. To pass the time, I opened a pawn shop in the instance. Any player who wanted a clue to clear the instance could come to my shop to make a trade. Whether they got a clue or not depended entirely on my mood. If they were lucky, they might even walk away with a 2S item. Little Grape volunteered to be my good luck charm, but she spent most of her time scaring away customers. Mrs. Sullivan offered to help with my books, but her eyesight was so bad she couldn't read the numbers even with her glasses on. Mr. Wallace became the pawn shop's security guard, though he was often seen down by the small river behind the building. The place ended up becoming the liveliest spot in the entire instance. Countless other specters wanted to work for me, but I turned them all away. Are you kidding? If there were too many high-level specters around, how would I get any customers? Someone once asked me if I regretted giving up my chance to be human, giving up everything the family had to offer. I looked back at the town, shrouded in mist. My voice was firm. No regrets. Because this place is my home, my sanctuary. Plainview was anything but plain. Every ordinary person is the hero of their own story. The end.